You know that kind of silence that feels like screaming? That's exactly what I felt when I walked into that house. The lights flickered, the back door was wide open, and the battery-operated radio on the floor played an old scratchy tune as if someone had paused everything a long time ago. I had 2 months of uniform and a gun that felt heavier than usual that night. But what on earth makes a man surrounded by photos of missing children look you straight in the eye and tell you your middle name when you've never seen that face in your life? How does someone know something about your past that you yourself don't even remember? The answer is simpler and more frightening than it seems, because some memories aren't yours. They were erased, covered up, or kept by someone who never wanted you to discover them. The call came in at exactly 3:47 a.m. A strange number, all too precise. The neighbor reported screams and the sound of furniture being dragged. Someone broke into the house again, she said. Again? That was what caught my attention. The house already had a history of old calls, but nothing registered. Upon entering, I found the man in the center of the living room, pale, sweating, trembling, in his right hand a rusty knife, and on the floor, dozens of photos were scattered, all with children's faces, some scratched. One of them was mine. I froze. He looked at me as if he'd been waiting for me for years. "You're back." I thought I'd never remember. My hand went to my gun, but my heart was already far away. Something about that sentence broke me. I didn't know why, but everything there seemed familiar. The smell of the old sofa, the creaking of the wood, even the clock on the wall, marked precisely 3:47. And it was in that moment, with the tip of the knife glinting in the flickering light, that he whispered, "You should have stayed here, Nick. It was supposed to be you." I don't really remember how I ended that call. The memory is jumbled in my head. All I know is that when reinforcements arrived, the man dropped the knife without resistance. He was handcuffed to the living room floor, still mumbling phrases that made me sick. "He's alive. The other one. They hid him." "But you already know that, right?" he repeated, looking at me with that look that mixed fear and relief, as if he'd accomplished his mission of warning me. Sergeant Willoughby thought I was feeling sick. He pulled me away from the scene and told me to get some coffee in the car. I did, but the truth is, I was trying to hold back the vomit. The image of that photo on the floor, the 5-year-old boy with the same haircut I had when I was little, wasn't leaving my mind. The expression on his face, the blue wall behind him, the same blue of the room that had sometimes appeared in my dreams since I was a kid, but which I thought was just a figment of my imagination. I went home, but didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the sun streamed through the window. When the clock struck 10, I returned to the police station. It wasn't my shift, but no one cared. I grabbed a coffee from the pantry and walked slowly to the archives. The door was locked, as it always was, as it should be, but I had access. The key wasn't digital, it was ancient, made of iron. No one paid any attention inside. It wasn't a place for newbies. As I turned the lock and pushed open the door, the smell of old paper and damp rose like a dry fist. The fluorescent lights flickered to full power, revealing rows and rows of metal shelves filled with hand-numbered brown boxes with faded labels. I don't know how my feet knew where to go. I walked as if being pulled, and stopped in front of shelf G4. There were dozens of boxes there, but one in particular had a broken corner and a loose lid, as if someone had recently opened it. The number 2213 was scrawled on the side in red marker. I carefully lifted the lid. Inside were missing person reports from 2012, local newspaper clippings, a pair of blue slippers stained with dried mud, and a folder with the name Carlos Dominguez on the cover. The name sounded wrong, or rather, incomplete. I opened the folder and began reading the reports. The first page was a missing person report, filed by a woman named Leticia Dominguez, a Chula Vista resident. The date, September 5th, 2012. A 5-year-old boy had disappeared from his own home in the early hours of the morning with no signs of forced entry. The child's name, Carlos Nicolas Dominguez. I stopped breathing for a moment. My name is Nicholas, Nick, and I was adopted in October 2012. I turned the pages with trembling hands. One of them had a photo stapled to the corner. The face was the same as the one in the photo thrown on the floor of the man's house with the knife. The same forced smile, as if the boy had been caught off guard when the photo was taken. The blue wall loomed in the background, and beside him was another boy, a little taller with the same haircut, but his face was scribbled on in black marker. The report stated that authorities suspected domestic abduction. There was no sign of a break-in, but there had been previous allegations of neglect. The case was closed 2 months later. The reason: the child was located and legally adopted by a family in Fresno. However, the adoptive family's name was written in black marker. Someone had censored that. I closed the folder slowly. My heart hammered in my chest. I could have sworn I could hear the blood rushing through my ears, a low, constant buzzing, as if something were getting ready to burst inside. I grabbed the folder, I closed the box, and went straight to the digital records room. I needed to confirm what the paperwork said. I sat down at the computer and typed my full name into the adoption system. Nothing. I tried with the data from the folder. Carlos Nicolas Dominguez. The system loaded for a few seconds and then froze. The screen went black, then blinked and returned to the main menu. I tried again. It froze again. Either there was a problem or someone blocked access. I got up and walked over to the officer in charge of the unit, a former detective named Marty Lewis. I casually asked if he knew how to access adoption records prior to 2015. He looked me up and down, then took off his glasses and asked, "Why do you want to know this, Alvarez?" I made up some excuse. I said I was helping with an old case that might be connected to a disappearance. He shook his head, a little suspicious. "Look, there are some files that are sealed by court order. Protected adoption cases, usually when they involve domestic abuse, child trafficking, or gang involvement. These files aren't public, not even to us, unless the police chief directly requests it, and even then, you need to justify it." I returned to my desk, trying to appear calm, but inside I was falling apart. All of this couldn't be a coincidence. The phone call, the man in the house, the photo on the floor, the folder forgotten at the back of the shelf. Someone had done everything they could to erase it, but they hadn't erased it properly, and now that I saw it, there was no way to unsee it. That boy in the picture was me, and maybe, just maybe, the boy next to me was still out there somewhere too, or under something. The next morning, the folder was no longer where I'd left it. I returned to the archive before work even started. I used the same key, walked down the same quiet hallway, but shelf G4 seemed to have been rearranged. Box 2213 was gone. In its place, another box, 2231, occupied its space. The date was different, the number out of order. That didn't seem like a mistake to me. I returned to the main room and feigned normalcy for the rest of the day, but everything inside me screamed. I needed to see those photos again, especially the face of that woman who appeared in the background in at least two of them. She wasn't the focus of the photo, but she was there, almost like a shadow. The first time she was seen sitting in a rocking chair behind the boys. The other time, she was standing outside the house, holding what looked like a grocery bag. Her face was partially turned toward the camera, but her striking features were visible. A long face, a thin nose, and deep-set eyes. I grabbed the copies I'd taken with my phone the night before and went to the only place someone might recognize it, the city's memory cellar, the San Diego City Library. There, hidden in the microfilm of local newspapers and in the archives of former residents, I found more than I was looking for. A 2011 headline stopped me in my tracks. Nanny disappears with 5-year-old in Chula Vista. The blurry photo was of a blonde woman with features identical to the one in the image I had on my phone. Name: Allison K. Monroe. The article stated that she had been hired by Leticia Dominguez as a caregiver for her twin sons, Carlos and Mateo. In September of that year, Allison left with Carlos for the park and never returned. Police searched the property, questioned neighbors, and followed leads that led to a rented house in Tijuana, but found nothing. According to the mother's account, she had hired Allison through a newspaper ad. The woman had false references and disappeared with the child, without a trace. The part that made me freeze was a line at the end of the article. Sources close to the family say Leticia believed only one of her sons was the target and that the other should have been taken as well. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I left the library and went straight to police headquarters, but I didn't return to my desk. Instead, I snuck into the room with archived statements. Most of the older interrogations were digitized on an internal server, but some were still kept on hard disk, locked in metal cabinets. After some searching, I found her name, Leticia Dominguez. Statement, September 2012. It was a DVD recording. I put it in the player and waited for the image to appear on the screen. The woman in the video looked 10 years older than her age indicated on the form. Her hair was tied back, her face was gaunt, and her eyes were sunken from crying. She trembled as she spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a kind of pain that sinks into the listener's stomach. They said they were only going to take one, that it was either that or both. I didn't know what to do. I signed what they gave me. I kept quiet for 10 years. Now he's coming back, right? I can feel it. The police officer conducting the interview tried to get Leticia to explain more about who they were, but she deflected, as if afraid of even her own echo. Allison, she wasn't alone. There was someone behind her, a man. He came every week, left money in the yard. He said that if I did what he told me, my children would live. The recording stopped there, as if the rest had been cut off. I closed the file, swallowed hard, and glanced at the clock. It was almost 7 in the evening. I stood there in the empty room, digesting every word that woman said. Someone orchestrated this. This was no ordinary kidnapping, and whatever happened, it was protected by more people than it should have been. I left the headquarters and went straight to the address listed in Letitia's old registration. The building still existed, but it was abandoned. The windows on the second floor were boarded up, and the rusty gate made it clear no one had lived there for a while. Still, something told me she was still around, that maybe she'd never left town completely. I contacted an old friend from the gym, Trevor, who now worked in private security and had access to street cameras and civilian trackers. I asked for help. I showed him the woman's photo. I didn't tell him everything, but I said enough. 2 days later, he called me to a cafe on 4th Avenue. His face was grim, as if he'd seen something he wished he hadn't. "Nick, this woman appeared on a traffic camera 3 weeks ago, Oakland, California, alone, walking around a corner looking straight into the camera, as if she knew they were filming." He showed the video. It was her, the same woman from the photos. Years later, the same face. But that wasn't all. In the bottom corner of the image, a child appeared walking right behind her, his face hidden by a blue cap. My stomach turned. Trevor paused the video and looked at me. "Do you think it could be him?" It took me a while to answer. I wasn't sure, but everything inside me screamed yes. Look for, what if he's alive? It had been 3 days since I'd seen the Oakland video. 3 days since I'd woken up at 3:47 a.m., sweating, with the same image in my head, a child walking behind Allison, wearing a blue cap. It didn't feel like a coincidence. It was like someone was throwing puzzles my way, but backward. And if it was indeed a puzzle, I'd already crossed the line of no return. I needed to see the house again. The same one where it all began, the one that appeared in the call, the one with the man with the knife. It had been sealed since the night of the incident, and the man was still under observation at the municipal psychiatric hospital. No one had returned. No one wanted to. I went. Late on a cloudy afternoon, with the light slowly fading from the sky, I parked my car in front of the house. The prohibition signs were torn. The front door was ajar. Someone had come in later. I went down with my hand on my holster, and my senses on alert. The house was empty, but the energy within it felt different, as if it had absorbed everything that had happened there and was now slowly, silently giving it back. I walked slowly around the room, feeling my footsteps echo on the loose wood floor. The chair the man had sat in that night still sat in the corner, overturned. The photos on the floor were gone. Only the dusty outlines where they had fallen remained. I climbed the stairs with my heart pounding. The banister creaked under my hand. In the hallway, 3 doors stood. 2 were open. The third was locked with an old padlock. I broke in with a sharp kick. The door gave way, revealing a child's room frozen in time. The walls were blue. The same blue from my dreams. The same blue from the photo. The frayed curtains let in the late afternoon light in thin streaks. In the corner, a crib made of light wood, covered with a stained sheet. I approached slowly. The mattress was sagging on one side, as if someone small had slept there for years. Leaning against the crib railing was a teddy bear. It was missing an eye. There were teeth marks on its arm. Next to the crib, a dresser with 3 drawers. I opened the first one. Old diapers, torn packaging, a bib that said "Little Fighter." The second, scrap paper, crumpled photos, an identification bracelet with the letters MD, Mateo Dominguez. The third, closed. I force it with my hands, but it's stuck. I give it 2 strong tugs until it opens, releasing a puff of dust. Inside, stains, small clothes, rolled up as if they had been packed in a hurry. At the bottom, a pair of garden shears with a dirty blade. The stain on the handle was dark, almost black, and it wasn't rust. I walk away with my stomach churning. I lean against the wall and close my eyes for a few seconds. I try to think. I try to understand. Why keep this? Why keep a child's room intact with traces of blood hidden in a drawer? I look around and notice something hanging on the wall above the crib. A painting. Inside, a photo. Allison, smiling, holding 2 children in her arms, one beside her, the other in her lap. The one in her lap was me. The other had a scribbled-out face. The frame has an inscription on the wood, "Forever mine." It goes through me like a blade. I leave the room, my body heavy. In the hallway, I hear a crack from below. I stop. I cock my gun. I descend each step, my heart pounding in time with the wood. Nothing, but there's a back door ajar, and barefoot prints in the dust. I go outside and follow the footprints to the backyard. Behind the shed, I find a loose wooden lid on the ground. Some kind of basement or underground compartment. With effort, I lift the lid and feel the sour smell rise. I shine my flashlight and see a ladder. I climb down. Downstairs, the dim light reveals concrete walls and stacked cardboard boxes, some torn. Inside, old toys, children's clothes and photos. Photos everywhere, stuck to the walls, scattered across the floor. Some are of me, others of a boy who looks very similar, and others of Allison in different places, always with children nearby, always smiling, as if each one were part of something she was trying to immortalize. I pick up a photo from the corner. The back is scrawled in blue pen. It shouldn't have been just him. I should have taken both of them. I hear the sound of footsteps above me. I run to the exit, but when I reach the backyard, I see no one. I look at the street, at the sky that is now completely dark, and I feel certain that someone was there with me, that house is not empty. It never was. And I'm just beginning to understand the kind of story that was buried in it. I returned home a stranger in my own skin. With every step I felt as if I were carrying two versions of myself, the police officer trained to maintain control, and the boy someone had ripped from his own story. I tried to lie down, but my eyes wouldn't close. My head spun with images that seemed to have been taken from a poorly staged nightmare. The blue crib, blood on the wood, the face erased from the photo, the message behind the image. I grabbed my phone. 3:22 a.m. I got up, put on my clothes, and left without thinking. I had no clear destination. I just needed to breathe, away from it all. But the moment I got into the car, the radio, still tuned to the channel from the night before, crackled. Unit 27, we received an anonymous call. Same address as the previous incident, 183 Polk Street. Internal noises. Doors open. Confirm availability. I didn't hesitate. Unit 27 on its way. The clock on the dashboard read 9:20 minutes later. I parked in front of the house. The streetlights seemed dimmer than usual. The entire neighborhood seemed to sleep in a forced silence. The wind blew through the thin trees, making a sound like a shuddering breath. The door to the house was open. Again, with the flashlight in one hand and the gun in the other, I entered. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. The crib was still in the room. The drawers were empty. The basement, sealed with the lid back in place, but there was something new. In the center of the room, someone had drawn a circle on the floor with white chalk. Inside it was a single photo, recently printed. The image was clean and crisp. It showed a blonde woman walking on an Oakland sidewalk, and behind her the boy with the blue cap. In the lower corner of the image, an almost imperceptible detail. Now, 3:47, the exact time Allison and the boy walked past the camera, the same time the phone call came, the same time the living room clock had shown the night of the first call, the same time I, for years, would wake up without knowing why. I took the photo with trembling hands. When I stood up, I noticed that the wall clock, the one that had been stopped since the beginning, had changed. It marked exactly 47. I took 2 steps back. The second hand trembled, as if it were trying to move, but held back by some invisible force. The sound of a metallic click made me turn sharply. The living room television turned on by itself. Black screen, a low hiss like old static. Then an image appeared, grainy, faint, but recognizable. It was the blue room, only it wasn't empty. The boy in the blue cap was there, sitting on the floor, playing with a red toy car. Beside him, a woman with her back turned, packed clothes into a suitcase. He stopped playing and looked straight at the camera, straight to me. The image cut off. The television went off. The air seemed to drain from the house. I ran upstairs and entered the room, empty. No sign of a camera, no recording, but there was a scent in the air, a light, familiar scent, sweet, almost imperceptible, like jasmine, the same fragrance I had smelled in the shed, in the basement, in the old photos. My phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. You saw him. Now you know where to look. And just below, an address. And 89 Chestnut Street, Oakland. I got back in the car, my heart pounding. I started the engine and drove straight to the police station. I entered as if in a hurry, but with measured steps. I didn't want to draw attention to myself. I knew I couldn't go alone, but I also no longer trusted anyone in the unit. I looked for Trevor. He welcomed me into his office, looking as if he hadn't slept in days. I showed him the new photo, the message, everything. He studied it calmly, then took a deep breath. Nick, whoever's pulling these strings isn't acting alone. This feels big. Someone's letting you in, but only as far as they want. And if this kid really is your brother, do you know what that means? I knew. It meant that I was separated from him, that someone profited from it, that the adoption was forged, that someone decided who stayed and who went. I'm going to Oakland, he said, the decision already firmly in his chest, with or without support. Trevor looked me in the eye, then nodded. Give me 15 minutes. I'll go with you. I grabbed the folder with the documents, the photos, the DVD, everything. It was time to go all the way. In the back of my mind, the image of the boy looking at the camera wouldn't leave, the way he stared at me, the blue cap, the silence all around. Something about him told me he knew it too. That was waiting for me. And that everything, all the pieces, all the silences, all the signs, pointed to a single hour. 3:47. We arrived in Oakland just before sunrise. The city was still breathing the tiredness of the early morning, When we stopped at the address indicated in the anonymous message, 2189 Chestnut Street, a grey townhouse with small windows, surrounded by empty commercial buildings. The facade seemed inoffensive, but the place had that same stuffy air that characterizes everything about this case, as if it had been hiding something or someone for far too long. Trevor stayed in the car, monitoring the local police frequency, ready to act if I delayed. We didn't know what was inside. We only knew I needed to get in. The front door was ajar. I pushed carefully, gun already in hand, and entered. Silence. The room was clean, with no signs of clutter. A sofa, a bookshelf with children's books, and a doll lay on the rug. In the corner, a lamp was on. The dim light cast shadows on the walls, as if the place were waiting for someone. I climbed the stairs slowly, treading lightly, listening to each piece of wood creak beneath my feet. The hallway was short, 2 doors, one open, the bathroom, the other closed. I took a deep breath. I touched the doorknob. Inside, the room was tidy. A child's bed, a desk with sketchbooks and simple toys. The air smelled the same as I'd smelled that night in the house in San Diego. Jasmine. And there he was, sitting on the floor, facing away, pushing the same red toy car from the recording. A blue cap on his head, small but not as small as in the photos. He must have been 9 or 10 years old. He stopped playing when he heard me. "You took a while." His voice was calm, as if he'd already known I was coming. I turned the gun down, swallowed hard, and knelt. "What is your name?" He turned slowly, lifting his face. "Mateo?" My body froze. The name came out of his mouth, as if pulled from a place that had always existed within me. "You," I began, not knowing how to continue. "I know who you are," he said. "She told you." Allison?" Mateo nodded. Then he pointed to an envelope on the desk. "Shelter." Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting shaky. "If you are reading this, it is because the time has come. I made mistakes. I made choices that destroyed families. I took one of them. I was paid for it. I didn't know there were 2. When I realized it was too late. But I kept him. I raised him. I protected him because someone had to pay it, and I tried to pay by taking care. Now he needs to know who he is, and you too." Behind the letter, a photo. Leticia Dominguez, holding her 2 children in her arms. A picture before the abyss. Mateo watched me silently. His eyes held no fear, just a strange kind of understanding, as if he too carried the same crack inside. "Do you remember anything?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Some. From the blue room, from Mom. From Allison taking me out of there, from you crying." My hands were shaking, my head was spinning, but my heart, and for the first time, it seemed to know where it was. Trevor came up soon after, calling my name softly. When he entered the room and saw the boy, he stopped. "Is that him?" I just nodded. Trevor walked over, looked around, and pulled out his cell phone. "The local police know nothing. No complaints, no surveillance. This place doesn't officially exist. The name of this house isn't in the city records, as if it had been erased." Mateo got up, took off his cap, and came over to me. "Are you going to take me away?" "I'll take you home." He smiled. Small, shy, as if he'd been waiting for that phrase his whole life. We left together, Trevor covering us. We got in the car and headed straight for a remote hotel. We knew it wasn't over yet. Someone, somewhere, was still pulling the strings, but now we weren't just pieces on the board. The next morning I sat down with Mateo and began to tell him everything I knew. I showed him photos, documents, videos. He listened silently, occasionally asking brief questions, but when I showed him the recording of his mother, the old video, he didn't blink. "Is she still alive?" he asked quietly. "I don't know." He was silent for a few seconds. Then he took out a pencil and wrote something on a piece of paper. He handed it to me. "She used to say everything would be all right at 3:47. I stared at that sentence as if I were staring at a prophecy. Mateo leaned back in his chair and dozed off right there, as if he'd let go of a weight the size of the world. And I stayed there, watching, remembering everything that had brought me here. That hour, that damned hour, was more than a number. It was the key, the moment where everything changed, where past and present intersected. And now, with him by my side, I knew someone was still out there. And we still had so much to discover, but not at that time. At that time, finally, someone slept in peace. 3:47. If this story kept you hooked until the very last second like it did Nick at 3:47 a.m., just imagine what's to come. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. Sometimes the truth only comes to those who keep searching.